Well, how long have we waited for this day? Here we are with our fifth book? Next book is a way to say right on, because we know they're always working on something, and it's probably, other than my kitchen crew, it's probably the most creative group that we have at People Plus. Fair? Nicely said, Gladys? Yeah. Anyway, this group, I think more than any other, the Right On group is probably just very representative of what People Plus is and what People Plus should be. So we're going to do some reading this afternoon. We're going to do some celebrating this afternoon, and please welcome all of our fine writers. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. What would People Plus be without Frank? Thank you for all you do for Right On and for People Plus. Well, welcome. We're delighted you're here. We're so excited about our new book called Times and Seasons. It's a beautiful book, and I really hope all my family on my Christmas list appreciate it, because it's a great gift, so think about that. Our dedication. This book is dedicated to those who love words and appreciate the skill and sometimes the magic it takes to turn those words into something you'll never forget. We love sharing our words with each other on Right In, and we love sharing them with you. So again, thank you for coming to join us. Well, we all have several different things in the book, and we had to make a choice what we wanted to share with you today. I could have told you about a letter from my mama that got lost, and I didn't receive it till years after she died. I could have told you about on my grandpa's farm when I was a little girl and the lesson he taught me about smoking. Or I could have read the fiction story about a little boy lost. Or I could have read to you about Southern comfort and Northern bliss, living in the South and then living in the North. But I'm sorry, you'll have to buy the book to get those. I'd like to read you something, a story about what happened to my husband. It's called At Last. In 1964, we were stationed in San Diego, California, a Navy family with 2 young sons. Gary's orders sent him to the USS Constellation, and the ship was headed for the Bay of Tonkin, the start of the Vietnam War. The first fighter airplane was shot down from that ship. Its pilot was captured, and he was the first POW. His name was Lieutenant Alvarez. Well, the war did not go as America expected. Political influences and lack of American support prolonged a horrific war. 58,220 soldiers died, and many others were left mentally and physically impaired. We left Vietnam without a victory. When Gary returned home, it was not to a hero's welcome, but to a mostly uncaring nation. Only the soldiers who served and their family knew and grieved for the ones who had given their all. At last, the broken and beaten POWs returned to a small, joyful reunion with their families and fellow soldiers. Often when asked where they had been for the past years, they answered Vietnam, and would be greeted often with silence or disappointment or sometimes hostile words. The military continued the job of serving and protecting Americans, seldom hearing the words, "Well done," or "Thanks for serving." But Vietnam veterans were happy to be home and to be alive. Time passed, retirement from the Navy, my children grew, the grandchildren were born, and we moved on about 50 years. This week, Gary went to Portland to eat out at Cracker Barrel. And after a very good meal, the check came. And on the check was written, "Paid in full. Thank you for your service." He was shocked. He was amazed. And he wondered, how would they know? And then he realized he had on his Vietnam veteran ball cap. At age 75, it was a satisfying feeling to at last be appreciated. Do we have any veterans here today? Would you raise your hand? All who have served our country? Well, in case you haven't heard it lately, thank you for your service. I have one short poem some of you might relate to. It's called A Sound Mind. The Bible says we are not given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. When I was young, it was all about love, finding that someone special. Later, it was all about power, raising children, my career, and just making life work. Well, today, in my sunset years, it's all about a sound mind. Lord, don't fail me now.
I'm Dottie Moody. My first poem is Right On. Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock is my church, it's my cathedral. Here the written word is sacred. Each one strives to carve their own words on the tablet of truth. No one is judged, all are esteemed. There is no hush. There is reading, laughing, caring, encouragement. In valuing the written word, we value each other. My poem, He's Beautiful, is dedicated to Stanley Kunitz, who was still writing poetry and still gardening after he was 90 years old. I want to live to be as old as he. Look at this picture. No more worries about beauty or handsomeness. All you see is age. Over 90 is my goal, with mind intact and slow motion possible. To still create words, beauty, flowers. There's beauty in advanced old age, not physical beauty, spiritual beauty. You've heard so much, you've seen so much, you've lived so much. God grant you other ears to hear your wisdom. God grant you comfort in your physical infirmities for just a little longer. For this one day, I choose to let go of fear. Fear will not allow me to have a good day. For this one day, I choose to let go of unforgiveness and its negativity. For this one day, I'm going to appreciate the sunshine, stay busy, love everyone. I'm not going to borrow trouble from tomorrow. This is my choice for today.
I am Charlotte Hart, and I will read Back to Boston, May 2013. It is about the Boston Marathon. It is about the Boston Marathon of April 15th, 2013. It is about the bombings. It is about shock, terror, outrage, and strength. Back to Boston. I will go back to Boston. Nothing will keep me away. I'll walk the common, watch the swan boats, as sun softens new leaves in May. I will go back to Boston, join the crowd at Old Fenway, sing Sweet Caroline by the Diamond. Nothing will keep me away. I will shed a tear on Boylston Street, then walked to the old North End. Galleria Umberto Calzone's will be lunch. Then the Freedom Trail we will wend. Harvard teams will row on the Charles. Rose Wharf boat, we'll take one for a day. Go to and return from Nantasket Beach. Nothing will keep me away. The Boston pops and fireworks stir the heart and fill the sky. I will go to Boston to listen on the night of the 4th of July.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Boring, and welcome. The story I'm about to read to you appears in the book that we just published, but it's in a longer version. And this one I just cut, and this is what you've got. The name of it is Together. Suzanne had had a busy day. The position of assistant manager of a Singer sewing shop in a small town in Vermont had been exhausting all week. Shortly, she would marry her Tom. They had purchased a condo and now needed to furnish it. Money was needed to do this. Tonight, she would not go directly home. She had made an appointment for 6 o'clock. She hurried to her car and drove off in the direction to her meeting. She felt a twinge of anxiety and hoped all would go well. An ad in the paper had jumped right out at her. A sewing teacher was wanted. The hours were wonderful and only twice a week. The words that had caused the anxiety were that the teacher was needed at the Women's Correctional Center. Shortly, her destination was reached, and a tall brick building loomed up in front of her. She told the guard at the gate of her appointment, and he opened the gate, and she drove in. A guard met her inside, inspected her purse, and escorted her down a long hall. He knocked on a door. A voice inside replied, and Suzanne entered the room. A small woman with a kind face motioned that she be seated. Questions were asked, and she was hired quickly. The interview had gone well, and now she had a week to worry about what she had agreed to. Soon Tuesday rolled around, and it was time to start her new adventure. The women filed into the room, and Suzanne observed them carefully. There were 10 of them, and they ranged in age from around 18 to perhaps 50. They seemed friendly and not at all life-threatening. A guard could be seen through the glass door, and that helped to boost Suzanne's confidence, and her knees stopped shaking and her heart beat slower. The lessons were to last for a full year. Suzanne had the only pair of scissors in the room, and getting started was slow and time-consuming. She became a devoted teacher, and her pupils grew to admire her and respect her. She earned the money and bought the luxuries that would have been unaffordable. Driving home from work 4 years later, Suzanne stopped at the local A&P for a few groceries. She collected the items on her list, and when she had reached 10, she stopped. She got on the end of the 10 or less line and waited. Recognizing people, she greeted them with a smile or a wave. Her minister's wife was 2 ahead of her, and behind her now stood her mother's neighbor. The line did not move quickly, and she began to wonder if some people had more than 10 items. Suddenly, she noticed a large woman on another line, but not recognizing her, she neither smiled nor waved. Suzanne had a faint recollection of the woman, but where they had encountered each other in the past did not surface immediately. She stared blankly at the face before her. Then the face suddenly fit into place. There, in vivid color, was a green desk. Sitting before it was this very woman, and on that desk was a sewing machine. Suzanne's mouth opened, but no words were uttered. Her eyes opened wide and stared in horror as everyone else heard up and down the checkouts, "Suzanne, Suzanne, don't you remember me? We were in prison together."
I'm Childe Spain, and that's all I'm going to say about that. The title of my piece is Torpedo. Our ship is SOPA 23.1, with a fourth striper in command of a nest of tin cans and some DEs. Right now, we are buoyed in Great Sound on a break from scouting the Wolf, a loner U-boat. Then the PA comes on and informs all hands that a storm is coming, and we are in its path. The wind is at 7 on the Beaufort scale now and is expected to hit full gale or a 10 on Beaufort. The PA comes alive and gives an all-hands message. Now hear this. All hands, not on special sea detail, will go below the main deck. We will leave the area and head out to sea. Fine with me. Soon I hear the rumble and clatter as the anchor chain rattles back into the chain locker. The ship's horn gives a whoop, 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 and a long blast, and we are underway. We are beginning to get some heavy swells now as we near St. George Light. Now it is dark, and the ship's crew is doing its juddering, dipping deep, stern down, then the bow down, da-da-da-da, and I am in my rack now and drowsing. Suddenly, a GI can comes loose from a stanchion and bounces around. Then comes to a loud crash from the chief's dining quarters behind the bulkhead next to our berth. Old P.P. Payne has been dreaming of the wolf pack. He jumps out of his rack and yells, "We have been torpedoed!" Now the whole engineering division that is not on watch hits the deck. We're in our skivvies and barefoot and no life jackets on. As we head for the nearest hatch, we come topside into the gale and drenching rain, huddled forward of the bridge. The old man has the con. He sees us. The next thing we know, the chief master-at-arms come and reams us out with some not-so-nice expletive words. Then he screams, "You're out of uniform. What are you doing here?" I answered, "I thought we'd been torpedoed." He yelled, "They can't operate in the seas this weather. They had run in deep and further out to sea. You're all on report. Get the hell below." With a hangdog looks, we snuck off. When the storm had blown itself out and the ship had secured from storm watch, when I walked on deck, they would holler, "Torpedo!" And if the exec, old Jock Hastings, happened to go by, he would guffaw and walk away. That stuck with me quite a while. The next time we had weather, I knew that you were never to go on deck without a life jacket, and oh yes, if you expected to abandon ship, always wear your shoes. Aside, the Beaufort scale is what we use to determine whether, the strength of a storm. And I wasn't a seaman, I was a diesel engineer, but I was alive. I wanted to know everything that was going on the ships. So I picked that up. So that's it.
Thank you, Charles. My name's Wendell Kinney, and I write memoir, fiction, short story fiction, and some not-so-good poetry. And I have 3 articles in the book, one about my 1941 Oldsmobile, which taught me a lot of lessons, and one about the witch trials in Ipswich. But they're long, so I'm just going to read a short piece. And oh, by the way, I have a CD that's on the back table for sale, and a book as well. A book. This is about my aching back. Oh, my aching back is a commonly used expression of dissatisfaction with an event or a situation. It may or may not be related to an actual aching back. Back being the posterior of the human anatomy, that is, the area of the human anatomy in the rear of the abdomen. The abdomen is that part of the human anatomy immediately below the chest and above the pelvis. The chest being that part of the anatomy commonly referred to in medical circles as a thorax, and is just below the neck. The neck being part of the anatomy just below the head, and is often another place that is painful, as in, oh, what a pain in the neck he is. The neck contains the larynx, or voice box, and is located below the cranium, which contains the brain. And we all know it is responsible for the aching back and the pain in the neck. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gladys Abel. Nice to see all of you here. I write about things in my life. The first poem I'm going to read you is Love at First Sight. Do I believe in love at first sight? It happened to me one magical night. I entered a party and smiles were exchanged, and all of a sudden I felt a bit strange. My heart was beating like a snare drum, and my stomach had jitters, and my legs were all numb. I searched for him as he graciously mingled, too shy to approach, having just become single. The evening was ending without having met. Chances were gone was my first bet. To my surprise, a second chance came along. He asked me to dance to a slow, easy song. I never did notice that very first night that he never did let me out of his sight. This one is a tribute to an aunt by marriage who did wonders for me, and if I put my glasses on, I can see better. It's Loving Memories of Aunt Ethel. A guardian angel now in heaven, I still feel your presence. Whenever I needed to bend your ear, you listened, then shared what I needed to hear, helping me to always see life as it is or how it could be. Never judging, just offering advice, a soft shoulder to lean on, oh so nice. An aunt by marriage, my closest friend, you spoke truthfully till the end, telling me exactly what was on your mind, not always what I wanted to find. Yet never an angry word we shared, honesty and fairness not to be compared. You will always be in my heart, in the sky, the brightest part. When I close my eyes, I see your face. At quiet times, I feel your grace. So many times you eased my strife, and still today you influence my life. Every day I'm so thankful to have had you as my guardian angel. Heartfelt thanks with all my love, first on earth and now above. And this other one is, it's called The Nest, and as I go up and down the road all the time, I see this, and it just kind of struck me. My eyes were drawn to the sky as a bird, toting a branch larger than he, appeared above me. The bird's image against the cloudless sky, gliding with superlative wingspan, was a magnificent sight. He dipped back and forth with the wind, determined not to lose his treasure. This reoccurring sight continued for days until his nest was completed, resting upon a plank between two power poles. The nest was majestic compared to the size of the bird. Day after day he sat on the pole or the lines, letting neither rain nor wind direct his watch over his nest. In time, eggs hatched, and mother bird appeared, sitting at the edge of the nest, feeding her babies while father continued his watch. This family continues to return every year, in spite of their home being destroyed several times by storms. To me, this is a wonder of nature.
Hi, my name is Ann Robinson, and I'm a dog person, I admit it. Most of my stories are about dogs. Golden retrievers, I have one. She runs my life. I have 3 stories in the book, all 3 of them about dogs. This is one of them. It's about my parents and dogs and how my mother came into the fold. It's entitled A Tale of Two Parents, and tail is spelled T-A-I-L, just in case you didn't get the dog connection. My dad had a way with dogs. They worshiped him. Put a dog in the same room and the dog would gravitate to him in a flash. At my dad's funeral, a hunting buddy told a story about my dad and dogs. Years ago, another buddy had a young, very large, and very untrained black lab who was wild and crazy, the canine form of ADD. The dog was never still, never obedient. In a room with people, he was a hurricane, constantly moving, no object or body part safe from bouncing paws, slobbering tongue, or pounding tail. His owner kept him locked away when visitors were present. There was one time, though, when several of the buddies were gathered at the owner's house, telling tales and drinking beer. The wild thing got loose. As the owner grabbed empty air, the dog scanned the room and made straight for my dad, charging past 5 other men and tables laden with meat and cheese. He jumped in my dad's lap and sat there calmly looking out at everybody, saying, as if to say, pay attention, this is how it's supposed to be. Dogs would always find my dad. My mother, not so much. We had always had dogs when I was growing up, but they were my dad's dogs, not my mother's. And mostly not mine, although I did get a little action now and then, but never my mother. She avoided them and they her. She was busy raising me, teaching English, grading papers, cleaning house, cooking. There was just no time for dogs. Once after I had left home, she expressed her frustration with my dad and his dogs. They weren't people after all. Molly, his German short-haired pointer, was about to have pups, and my dad had spent the entire night in the basement with her. My mother could not believe it. Do you know what your father did? I will never understand him. It's a dog, for Pete's sake. I did not let on that I understood. And then my dad died. They had retired to Corpus Christi, Texas by then, and lived out on Padre Island when it was still remote and sparsely populated. Katie, my dad's last dog, was getting old, and so we suggested to my mother that she consider getting a puppy. I had a golden retriever, and she decided she was willing to look at a litter, but not convinced she wanted one. There was a good breeder in Houston from whom I'd gotten my dog, and she happened to have a litter ready to go. So we drove to Houston. There were 2 pups left, and when my mother saw them, it was over. An army could not have kept her from those pups. She instantly bonded with the pup she picked up, and of course it was her dog. My dad was not there, and no one else was in the house. Years later, when Sam the dog was getting older, she brought up that previous conversation and confessed that she now completely understood my dad and his dogs.
Hello, I'm Nancy Soule. Before moving to Maine, I was a teacher in Illinois, and I must confess that as a teacher, I probably looked forward to snow days as much or more than the kids. There's something wonderful about the anticipation of a day where you can stay home and do absolutely nothing and no one cares. Last winter, when big snows were predicted, I found that I began thinking about snow days again, and my feelings were much the same as they had been earlier when I was teaching. And so I wrote this about snow days. Glasses. Yeah. They say a blizzard is coming. We'll have a snow day for sure. It doesn't matter if you're 6 or 60, there's something exciting about a snow day. There's plenty of warning. Weathermen have talked about this arrival for days. There's that rush to get to the grocery store along with everyone else getting milk and toilet paper. You fill your car with gas and you wait. Like a kid, you scan the skies. The day is here. What a great excuse to stay home, safe and warm. It's a cookie baking day, a watch old movies day, maybe a mid-afternoon nap day. It's a snow day. Here it comes. It's soft and white, and the world is suddenly quiet and still. And then it's gone. The plows are out and the roads are clear. The sound of snowblowers fill the air. Where should we go? What should we do? Life is moving again. But wasn't it pretty? Wasn't it nice? A snow day just for you to slow down and enjoy. Thank you.
My name is Beth Compton, and the first one I'd like to read to you is Thanksgiving. It is with me at my aunt's with all my cousins. Time for turkey, pumpkin pies, chocolate cream pies, and all the fixings. So good in the tummies, full, yum, yum, yum. The later time with family, all the stories everyone has to tell about all the funny things that happened to each and every one. The next one is about my cat, but unfortunately she's no longer with me, but her real name was Penelope, but I called her Penny, so it's called Penny the Sneaky Cat. Penny loved to get into things and loved to get underfoot. She liked to do things when she thought she wasn't being watched. Penny, I see you. If you think that I'm not looking, you're wrong. You love to be sneaky, don't you? And you love getting into trouble. You're such a crazy and funny cat, and it's hard telling what you're going to do. You enjoy getting into things that you shouldn't. You know, no matter how many times you do the things you do, I love you anyway. And then the next one I'd like to read is called Dark Stormy Night. I like that one. I wrote this one because I love Halloween. It was a dark, stormy night. It was a dreary night. The wind was howling. The branches on the trees were going snap, snap, crackle, pop. The leaves were falling everywhere. The lights were out all over. There were things going bang, crash. Things were flying everywhere. There was a loud scream, yelling, help, help, help. Then you heard nothing, only the howling of the wind. And the last one I'd like to read is called The Moonlit Night. I wrote this because I looked outside one night and I loved looking at the nice bright moon. It was a bright moonlit night, the shining so bright, the stars glistening in the sky. What a beautiful sight. It was such a lovely night.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here this afternoon and spending this beautiful afternoon with us. My name is Paul Kowalski. That's why I write under the pen name P.K. Allen. My section of the Times and Seasons contains excerpts from my newest book, The Sands of Time, Life With and Life After Pinky. I'll be giving the author's chat the next month at October 8th at 2 o'clock. Before reading my section today, I'd like to tell you about the author's chat. The Sands of Time contains about 80 pictures, 80 poems, 160 short stories about life, love, the good times, the sad times, a lot of events and family experiences during a lifetime. Some of these events I'm sure you and your families have experienced during your lifetime, like weddings, births, funerals, holidays, hobbies, children, grandchildren, cancer, and the loss of a loved one. It also contains stories that help to define certain periods in our life by the pets we owned. We had during that time, and in the book I refer to these pets as our friends. And I won't just be reading, I'm going to tell the story behind the first 3 self-published books last year. The first one was Reflections, Some Thoughts on Life and Love. That little picture in the front, Pinky had painted, and I copied it for the front of the book. About 150 pages of poems on life and love. The second one is A Journey. I'll take you on a journey through space into the universe and tell you about some of the wonders of the universe. And the third one is called Impressions, from an ordinary person of famous people I've never met. People like Cher, Kevin, Hillary. Now, I only know one Hillary. I don't know about you. Liz, Madonna, and from Maine, Stephen and Margaret. To find out who they are, you'll have to come. I'll tell stories from the sands of time, life with and life after Pinky, from 1965 to 2013, and how the loss of a loved one affects everyone in a family, even your pets. And finally, my answer to how I cope with the loss and face it every day, and for those who have lost loved ones, it may help. I'd like to think it's going to be a very special and different kind of author's chat. I hope you'll join me on October 8th. And now, back to my reading. Oh, the author's chat will also have videos. It'll have some songs and some music videos. And now back to today's reading, and it's from a chapter in a book that I call Letters. Now, I'm not going to tell you the story behind the letter. You can read that for yourself if you purchase the book. Wrong book. Dear Margaret, by now you probably have received your polio inoculation and know that all your fears were for naught. You know that worrying about how much it was going to hurt was much worse than the momentary prick. I'm glad that you were perfectly willing to accept your mother's decision as to what was best for you, and if not already, sometime soon you will know that how right she was. Sincerely, Jonas E. Salk, MD. I'll have that here in a frame along with the 3-cent stamp envelope back from 1956. In closing the author's chat today, I'd like to remind you that many of the authors of Times and Seasons are here. We all have our little patches on. If you buy the book and you see the patch, you can have them autograph the book for you. Remember, the proceeds will go to People Plus. There is also a selection of other books available. Our book is $14.95. Frankly speaking, it's $16.95, but if you buy them both together, it's $25. And our last book will only be $10 more. So for $35, you can buy 3 books. And Christmas is coming around the corner, so it's a good time to buy it. And what better gift can you get than a book from a Maine author from Maine? Thank you very much for coming today.
Our last speaker, Patti Sparks, unfortunately is not here because she has a very bad cold. So she asked me to read her what she would have read today. She has a lot of poetry at the very, very end of our book, and she's a wonderful poet. She loves haiku. And in fact, I taught her how to write haiku. And so I remember that day with just counting syllables. Haiku is 3 syllables and 5 syllables on the second line. No, 7 syllables on the second line and then 5 syllables on the third line. So it's 575. Those are the magic numbers. And you can become the most wonderful poet by just, memorizing those numbers and counting syllables. When you leave today, you'll be looking at the trees and the birds and the grass and whatever, and just making poems, galore. But the poems that she asked me to read, 2 are very short, and 1 is a little longer. They're all beautiful, and they end our book, and that's very important. First poem that I'd like to read is called At Dawn, and I wonder if she asked me to read this one because I kind of fit in there. Well, we'll see. The poem says, "Old eyes gaze seaward. She rises and combs her hair, a woman alone." That's it, 3 lines. Old eyes gaze seaward, 5 syllables. She rises and combs her hair, 7 syllables. And the third line, a woman alone, is 5 syllables. So that was one. And another one she wanted me to read was Maine Nor'easter. Seas rage, winds pummel, shorelines of granite and pine. It's snow falls on snow. And the third one, I'd just like to read you one line from the introduction of the book, because this is why this poem ends the book. The introduction says, "Lastly, clever haiku and other poems provide pleasing visual and comforting word pictures to end our book. The covers close, leaving lovely thoughts of a perfect summer day in Maine." And this is Patti's poem. I can just find it. Maine Summer Solitude. I shall carry out my tea tray, prop old pillows up against a tree, creating a lounge upon the earth. There, through eyelids longing to close, I'll await the elusive kiss of an August breeze against my cheek. Then, into blissful surrender, as the breath rises and falls, my soul shall drift down, 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 into the quiet solitude of a perfect summer day.
After the children have come and gone, one child stays and continues on. Master of the house, ruler of the land, yet always reaching out for his wife's reassuring hand.
He's a good writer. Don't give it up.
I'll get back to it.
All righty, promise me that. Yeah, without him, I tell you, this book would have been very hard to get out. He went out of his way to make it perfect. And you edited and you edited and you edited, and there's still a little few things. But and take it.
Looks just like you. It spells something. It spells enjoy.